Good morning. If you're new around here, I am Josiah Fuller, the family minister here at Southport Heights Christian Church. I'm covering one more time for Steve Ferguson, who is our senior pastor. Speaking of Steve, a couple of years ago, I got an email from Steve. Here's how the email goes. Hello, I have a request I need you to handle. Hope you can get back to me soon as you can today. Here's what I want you to do for me because I'm a little busy right now. I have been working on incentives and I aim to surprise some of our diligent staff with gift cards this week. This should be confidential until they all have the gift cards, as it's a surprise, and you will keep one for yourself too. Can you get this done? And how soon? Sent from my mail. This was a scam. I knew it was a scam as soon as I read it because I know Steve. First of all, Steve doesn't sound like that in his emails. And secondly, my office is right down the hall from Steve's. Anytime he wants to talk to me, he's like, hey, can you come to my office and talk to me? This was not like Steve at all. It was clearly a scam. And Hugh taught me, going through this process of, hey, I think we're getting scammed and people are getting emails from Steve, he taught me if you click on the name at the top of the email, it said Steve Ferguson. If you click on that, it'll actually show the email address it comes from, which was not Steve's email. It was a scam. Scams are everywhere today. We have to be so careful. We are getting emails that princesses from random countries need our help. We are getting infomercials and commercials on our phones, on our TVs, that if you buy this product, all your dreams are going to come true. Just send a little money. You can just take this pill. You can just put this thing on your stomach and you're going to have six-pack abs. There's so many things out there that we have to be careful of. And the idea behind it all works because we look at the things that are being offered to us and we want it. We want to be thinner. We want to make money easily. We want to get all the benefits without having to do all the work. And so part of us is always in there thinking, well, maybe this one's not a scam. Maybe we could try this. And so we put our faith into things that are designed to steal our faith along with our money. And so it gives us this idea that faith is really only as valuable, as meaningful, as strong as the object of that faith. I could put all my faith in the world in I've seen this commercial a couple times, so I keep bringing it up. This thing that's going to give me six-pack abs. I just have to wear it while I'm watching TV. It's going to rumble up my tummy, and it's going to melt the fat away. It sounds really appealing. I could put my faith in that, or I could go to Google and look at the reviews and say, oh, no, this is a scam. It doesn't work. I could put my faith in the lottery. And that means that my faith has a 1 in 300 million chance of coming through for me. Our faith is only as strong, as meaningful, as valuable as the object of that faith. So God has a proposal for us. He says, put your faith in me. And even if your faith is a little shaky and you're not sure, test me, challenge me. See if I really am who I say I am, because God knows that He is. And that He's going to come through for us. So as we think of this and wrestle with this question of, what was I made for? What am I here for? What is this meaning of life? God is saying, check me out and see if I measure up and can answer this question for you. So just like last week, we've been looking at this passage in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. For you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is God's gift. Not from works, so that no one can boast, for we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. What was I made for? God is the creator. We were made for good works. Jesus is our Redeemer. God created us. We've gone away. And even then, God says, no, I still want you for what I created you for. So he sent Jesus to bring us back. And through Jesus, by the grace of God, we can do good works. So last week we talked about the grace side. We shared the parable of the workers in the vineyard and talked about, whether you're working all day or you come in at the last hour, the owner of the vineyard is going to take care of you. And the picture is God is going to take care of us. If we've been in church all our lives, if we fell away and came back, if we just now discovered how great Jesus is and it's the 11th hour for our lives, but we're all in for Jesus, God's going to take care of us regardless. He is our shepherd. He has everything we need. So that's the grace piece. And we talked about the window and the mirror and this idea of how we look at other people out the window and how we look at ourselves in the mirror, and this idea that God offers a lens of glass, a lens of this window and this mirror of grace, that when we look at others with the grace of God, when we look at ourselves with the grace of God, then we are in a better position to do the good works he has for us. So by grace is God's part. That's how he does what we can't do so that we can accomplish these good works. And then through faith is our part. Through faith is what we're going to be focusing on today, and we're going to be looking at another parable of Jesus. So by grace, through faith, not from works, because our faith doesn't give us the works that save us, but our faith pushes us to do the good works because we are saved. By grace, through faith, not from works, for good works. So to illustrate this faith piece, our side of the equation, our relationship with God, we're going to be looking at Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. And this is the parable of the talents. I love this parable. If you want to join me with it, I'm going to be taking my time and taking it verse by verse. So here it is, Matthew 25, 14 through 30. I'll be reading from the CSB. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. All right. For it is just like, if you look at the top of the chapter, Jesus has been telling some parables, and he's talking about the kingdom of heaven. He loves using parables to explain the kingdom of heaven. And so, for it is just like, the kingdom of heaven is just like a man about to go on a journey. And we can picture this man. As we go through, we see that this is the master, and he's going to have some servants working for him. I think this is a direct connection to Jesus and how he's gone. Jesus has come to earth. He's saved the day. He's done what he needed to do, and now he is gone to prepare a place for us. So he's on this journey, and he's going to come back. He calls his own servants. I love that so much. He knows us. This master, this man, knows his servants. He has a relationship with them, a personal relationship, and he entrusts his possessions to them. Verse 15, to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey. So a talent in Jesus' day was worth about 6,000 denarii. And if you remember from last week, a denarius, which is the singular of denarii, plural, is 1 day's wage. So we're looking at about 20 years worth of wages in a talent. For today's numbers, we could probably think of $1 million. A talent is $1 million. So to one he leaves $5 million, to one he leaves $2 million, to one he leaves $1 million. If it's easier for you to think that way, 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent. And this part is so crucial, depending on each one's ability. Again, it goes back to he knows his servants. The master knows his servants. And he's not going to give them more than they can handle. If he split it up evenly, then that means 2 of these guys would be given more responsibility than they could handle, and one of them would be falling short of his potential. So he distributes it based on what they can handle. And then he goes on his journey. Immediately is in verse 15, but it really shouldn't be in verse 15. The verses and chapters in the Bible were not original. They were not written in originally in the scrolls as they were written. They were added between the 13th and 16th century, and they're very helpful. It's really good to have chapters and verses. We can find where we're trying to read and follow along with each other. It's easy. It's a great tool for study. But sometimes the people who put in the verses and chapters, sometimes we don't always agree with the divisions they made up. So this is a little weird that immediately is in verse 15. So I'm going to go ahead and read it in verse 16. Immediately, the man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned 5 more. So there's this sense of urgency. The master has gone away, and he's entrusted me with these 5 talents. And there's an implication here that this is not something I'm just supposed to sit on. He gave this to me. This is like a business deal. And when we think of these servants, we shouldn't be thinking of butlers and maids. Not that there's anything wrong with butlers and maids, but a lot of people were in a servant role in Jesus' day. You could have doctors and lawyers and teachers that were also considered servants to the ones that they worked for. So these are most likely some pretty business-savvy people that the master has entrusted this money to. So immediately means this guy didn't waste any time. He put them to work, and he earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. So in the same way means he had that same sense of urgency. He understood what was happening when the master left the money. This is not something I sit on. This is something I'm supposed to put to work. This is a business deal, and my master is trying to build the business. And he's counting on me to do that, so I'm going to do that. The man with 2 earned 2. Notice that the man with 2 didn't earn 5. He didn't get a total of 10. He didn't get a total of 7. He didn't do what the first one did. The first one turned 5 into 10. This one turns 2 into 4 because that was his ability level. That was the expectation. He did what he was expected to do. Verse 18, but the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. So our red flags should be waving. I was waving red flags with the teens earlier today. Our red flag should be waving on this one, especially with the word but there. There's clearly a difference in strategy between this servant and the other ones. They immediately went to work. He dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Let's see how that works out for him. Verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So after a long time, these guys didn't know how long the master was going to be gone. They were uncertain of that, so they went to work immediately. But it clearly shows that they had plenty of time to do what they needed to do with the responsibility that he had given them. And again, this coming to settle accounts with them points back to they understood the responsibility. They had a task to do, and they were going to do it. Verse 20, the man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I've earned 5 more talents. This reminds me of when Megan and I were early in our marriage. Before we had kids, we lived in Jacksonville. We moved there to work for a church as the youth minister and the secretary. But they could only pay us a couple $100s a week because they had been going through some things and were in a recovery state. So we both had to get some outside jobs to help support our church habit. So I had a job at UPS from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, and a job at Iron Mountain from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening. And the contrast between these 2 jobs, they were both good labor jobs, got me sweaty and working. But the contrast between them was so interesting. At UPS, I was a sorter. And so the guys that had brought in the semis, they would send a guy out to the semi, and he'd unload boxes onto conveyor belts. And these boxes would come to me. He'd be unloading them as fast as he could. I have to look at these boxes and identify out of these 24 other conveyor belts which belt the box should go on based on which state it was going to. So I had to read the states, and I had to sometimes read the zip codes. And so a lot of times, the guy in the truck is chucking these boxes out as quickly as he can. There were a lot of times that I'd have to say, okay, hold on, give me a second here, because I'm falling behind, and I'd get this pile of boxes up around me falling onto the floor, and I'd have to have them wait so I could catch up and get things where they were. It was a pretty hectic job. It was very fast-paced. The 4 hours went by really quickly. Over at Iron Mountain, it was almost the opposite. We were in a big warehouse, 3 stories high, full of boxes, and our job was we held mostly medical files. And so if a doctor's office or a hospital needed a medical file, they would send a request to Iron Mountain. We would get a ticket that told us exactly where that file was. We'd go up and find it, come back down, give it to a driver, and then the driver would take it to where it needed to go. That was the main part of the job, but the other part of the job was called destruction. And that was when we had old files that were out of date, probably the people were deceased and we didn't need to keep them anymore. We would take these boxes of files, load them up on a pallet, wrap them in saran wrap, and send them off to be destroyed to protect records. And I loved that part of the job. And there was a lot of that to do, because I would come in from UPS and really pumped up and my mind's going 100 miles an hour. I'd come over to Iron Mountain and I'd just get, all these pallets, get all these boxes loaded on these pallets. I was getting probably 4 or 5 times as much work done as anybody else at Iron Mountain. So over at UPS, whenever a manager needed to come talk to me, it was like, Fuller, we gotta pick up the pace here. You're kind of falling behind. I know, I'm sorry. And then over here at Iron Mountain, it's like, whoa, look at all the things you accomplished. You are amazing at this. I'm like, thank you. And of course, I had much more fun working at Iron Mountain than I did at UPS, but they were both good jobs. So I can imagine how this first servant comes to his master, these first 2 servants really, and he's like, look, you gave me this job to do. Look what I've done. I did what I needed to do. I got you 5 more talents. I got 100% return on this investment you put in me. And this next part is what we always want to hear, isn't it? It's what we are looking forward to from our parents, from our bosses, from people that we respect in our lives, and especially we look forward to hearing it from Jesus. His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy." He said, well done, good and faithful servant. He was good because he did the work he was supposed to do. He was faithful because he did it even when the master wasn't there watching him, even when he wasn't there with him. You were faithful over a few things. So to this master, 5 talents, $5 million, is a few things. And I am going to put you in charge of many things. So this is not a reward in the sense of, oh, you did a good job, here's a bonus. This is a promotion. He's getting a promotion in the company, really, that he's going to have more responsibility and more perks to go along with it, more benefits. But the main thing here is share your master's joy. So often we want to be the master. We want to be in control. We want things done our way. We know what joy looks like for us, and we're going to work really hard to achieve our idea of joy. But Jesus is subtly reminding us here that he really knows best. And we'd really be better off if we just give up that whole idea of trying to be the master. If we just share in his joy, that's what he's inviting us to. We can share in his joy, and it's going to be the best thing for us. Verse 22. The man with 2 talents also approached. He said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've earned 2 more talents." So it's the same thing. He's proud. You get this sense that he's proud of the work he's done. He said, you gave me a job to do, and I did it to the best of my ability, and I am proud of, I can stand by my work. And his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy." There's no difference between his response to both of these. Even though one brought back 10 and the other brought back 4, they were both good and faithful with what was entrusted to them. That was all good so far. Let's see what happens with this third fella. The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, "Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed." What? Okay, so first of all, he starts with, "I know you." It's almost like saying, I know you better than these other chumps. They fell for your games. I know what's really going on here. I really know you. And then he turns around and he insults him. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered. He's basically saying, you're a tyrant. You just take whatever you want, whether it belongs to you or not. And it's sad, but it's true that a lot of people have this idea of God. They think of God as this big bully in the sky that just punishes them for his own enjoyment. And it's really hard to get someone out of that mindset, because you have to convince them on the one hand that this is not all about you. The world is bigger than you and your problems, but also that God does love you and he wants what's best for you. And sometimes your problems aren't about what God wants. Sometimes they are. I believe that sometimes God allows things to happen to us simply because it's the consequence of our choices. And I believe that sometimes we have to deal with trouble because of the consequences of other people's choices, because we are relational creatures, and what you do can affect me, and what I do can affect you. So sometimes we just suffer because of the people that are close to us. I also think that there's sin in the world that just has negative consequences over time. Things like cancer and illness and mental disorders and all sorts of different things. I mean, there are some things that you can kind of pinpoint and say, yeah, that was the cause of this. And then there's other things, it's like, man, it just happens. And I think that's because we live in a fallen world, and that's not what God wants, but he's going to use it. Because I also believe that in all of our suffering, that God gives us the opportunity. He wants us to come back to him. And sometimes we need to be at rock bottom before we realize that we need to reach out to God. Sometimes our lives are going so well that we forget to honor God and we forget to put him first. So he needs to humble us a little bit, because all in all, we are not well off if we are not with God, if we are not accepting Jesus and recognizing his place in our lives. So I think that we want to blame God a lot of times. I think that God will use the stuff that's in our lives, but it's hard. It's really hard to convince someone who's just in that place, and that place of bitterness, and that seems to be where this last servant is. So verse 25, he says, "So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours." It's like this attitude of, I don't trust you. I have to work for you, but I don't really want to help you, so I'm just going to do what I need to do. And just take back what is yours. Verse 26, let's see what the master says. His master replied to him, "You evil, lazy servant." Notice the servant claimed to be afraid, but the master doesn't even address that. He ignores that part because he can see right through him. And this is a direct contrast to what he said to the first two servants. You're not good, you're evil because you had a job to do and you chose not to do it. And you're not faithful, you're lazy. While these guys were working the entire time I was gone, you did this one-time act of burying this. What were you doing with the rest of your time that I was away? You're lazy. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I return. He said, this isn't about you being afraid. If you were afraid, you would have actually done something. No, this is you being lazy, and you didn't even do the bare minimum. You could have done something. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. First of all, let's take care of the money and put it in hands where it can be trusted. Verse 29, "For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him." So this is one of those verses, again, that if it's taken out of context, you could feel like it's a little unfair. But really, again, it's talking about consequence. And this is true in all aspects of life, whether you're talking about physically or mentally, relationships or whatever. If you're working towards something and you're building something up, often you're going to get more gains than you even worked for. But if you let a whole area of your life slip, then even what you have will atrophy. You're going to lose it. And so this is just talking about consequence. You were working for me, and you didn't do any of the work, so you're going to lose it. But the one who works well for me, I can trust him with these extra things I need to give him. Verse 30, and throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what happens when you work for a company that gives you a company car, is paying for your high-rise apartment, is covering your cell phone bill? What happens when you are underperforming and the CEO of the company wants to talk to you, and then he meets with you, and you decide to insult the CEO while you're in a meeting about how you're underperforming in your work? You're out of here. You lose it all. You lose all the benefits of being with this company. And this is exactly what Jesus is saying here. We are working for the master, but we've been enjoying, we don't always appreciate how much we're enjoying all the benefits that come with, number one, just being humans, having this wonderful world to live on and having the relationships we have, but even more so in the church. We appreciate the connections and the gifts and all of the perks that come, the future that we have. You shun that. You shun Jesus and you're shunning all of that. But I love this parable because it has a very simple bottom line. And the bottom line is just do something. I mean, he talks about the bank, just put the money in the bank. Just do something. Don't sit around and show up to church, because we're talking about the kingdom here, and the church is the kingdom. Don't just sit around and be here. Do something. Do something with your relationships. Do something with your talents. Do something. And then with looking at the first two servants, I love the encouragement we have here, because they didn't have the same expectations because they weren't the same. This master knew his servants. He gave them responsibilities that they could handle based on the gifts and the talents that he gave them. And he didn't expect them to accomplish more than what he gave them the ability to. So we can take comfort in knowing that Jesus knows what we're capable of, and he's giving us what we need to accomplish it. We can find encouragement and strength in doing that something, whatever we figure out we're going to do. We can do it because Jesus has given us what we need. But it brings us back to this idea of the window and the mirror too, because it can be really tempting to look at other people and say, well, you're not doing as much as I'm doing. Shame on you. You should be doing more. Or to look at someone else and be envious and say, man, look at them. They're so much better than I am. But that's not what's happening here. You take care of you. You support and encourage each other. We all support and encourage each other. And we can accomplish more together because Jesus has it figured out that all of our talents, how they will fit together like puzzle pieces to make this beautiful picture of the kingdom. But we need to do our part. And if we don't, we're out of here. So, as we wrap up today, we're talking about the good works, and clearly this parable is talking about these servants going out and doing good works and really leaning into our responsibility of this through faith, by grace, through faith, to do good works. I wanted to leave you with just 4 aspects of faith and how we can kind of develop and enhance those and build those up as we go on to help us with the good works that we have. Now, let me say the good works, we're going to have this ministry fair, and it's going to be great. We're going to get more people signing up to doing more work around here, and it's going to be really helpful to the church. But this is not the only good works. Doing something in this building or doing something officially on a ministry team at Southport Heights, that's not the only good works there are. There's so many things that you are capable of, that you are talented in, that you can produce, that we're not offering at one of these tables. So I don't want you to feel overpressured to, well, I got to sign up for something because he said just do something. Doing something doesn't mean it has to be here. It means the kingdom is us. The kingdom is the people. The kingdom work, the good work, is bringing more people in to connect with Jesus. And so that happens in personal relationships. That happens in work relationships. That happens in conversation with our neighbors. And so as we are trying to strengthen our faith so that we can be more effective in the good work we want to accomplish for Jesus, I want to leave you with these 4 ideas. So the first one is confidence. And the idea of confidence here is having confidence that God is who he says he is. And that's something that can start small, but it can grow. The more you learn about God, the more you study, the more you look into history, the more you appreciate nature, the more life you live. If you're looking for it, you're going to find more confidence in God being who he says he is. And of course, Jesus being who he says he is and being our Savior and our King. So having this confidence building in us will help us in doing these good works. And then number 2 is priority. As our confidence in God grows, then his priority over our lives grows as well. I think a lot of people don't want to answer that first question about what they really believe in God because they know that part 2 is, well, if I say I believe in God, then that means I actually have to rearrange my life to reflect that. And I don't want to do that part, so I'll just ignore the first question and say, nah, I don't think so. So this idea of priority, again, it doesn't mean showing up to church every time the doors are open. It means that where I am and what I'm doing, I know that I have God right there with me, that Jesus is with me, that I can, in my conversations, in my behavior, I can let my belief and my faith in Jesus reflect more on those around me so that they can be attracted to him through me. And then number 3 is contribution. And contribution is the one that we're kind of talking about with the ministry fair. It's doing something, just doing something, figuring out, what did God give me that is unique? What has God put in me that I can do that comes easy to me that maybe doesn't come easy to other people? And you have to kind of figure that out through relationships, through conversation, that letting other people share with you what they see in you so that you can say, oh, maybe I should lean into that. Maybe I can do this thing that I didn't think I was really talented in or gifted in. So contribution, trying to just find something to do and just doing something. And then letting it grow. You might be in something today. I'm sure some of our more senior members can attest that their talents and where they were applying their faith in their younger days is not the same as where they're applying them today. That it can change, it can grow, it can morph into different responsibilities and different actions. And then finally, longevity. With faith comes faithfulness. This idea that we're just not going to quit. We're just going to keep on showing up. We know that God shows up for us. We know that Jesus has shown up for us, and he's going to keep showing up, so we're going to keep showing up too. And we are awaiting our master's return. So we're going to keep working until he shows up. So we do have this ministry fair coming up. We have opportunities around here that are good starting places if you don't know what it means. I would say even joining a small group is a great opportunity to start off in doing something, because so much of the work of the kingdom is relationships, and so much of it is being with people, getting to know people, building relationships with people so that you can learn how you can minister to them, how you can be ministered to. So we can serve, we can join a group. There's a lot of things that we can do, but I want to encourage you all, just do something. It's Jesus. He deserves it. And we love him, and we want to hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant.